5 years. And we've kind of let that go. And a lot of that, I'll put that on me because I know I've been the leader of this thing. But that's one of the reasons why. And there's been a lot of people asking, where do we stand with the master plan? Especially since Canton has come out with theirs and so on. So that'd be a really good time to kind of go through where we are and where we're going with this. So I know there's a lot of slides around. They're usually pretty quick. I'm going to go through those. So if you want to go, well, first of all, we did develop it in 2012, City of North Canton Chamber, with input from a project steering committee and the community at large, and the assistance of the state Cleveland Urban Design Collaboration. Next slide. All right, this was interesting, and this came from the Canton repository. Jess, how about that? And I'm going to quote you. This had to do with the Cantons, and I thought it was a really good quote, though. So we must embrace the plan, not necessarily as a gospel, but as a guiding document that's flexible enough that it can adapt to times of change or uncertainty, yet they're still true to its core principles. And I think that's very apropos of what we have here. There might be some changes, but a lot of those things that were in there are very important. We need to kind of stress to move forward on those. Next slide, please. And this is one of my favorite slides with this in mind. One of my favorite quotes, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where it has been. And that's exactly what we're talking about with the master plan. It is about the future. It isn't about exactly right now. It's about where we're headed down the road in the future, what our plans should be. Now, that's good. The major recommendations of the plan include the identity, the corridors and connections, and the development sites. Go ahead, next slide. Identity. One of the top first things that was on it was that we were to phase out the current tagline as the Dogwood City and reinforce the identity of the city as simply North Canton. And we got to a point, and we seemed to, I kind of pulled back on that a little bit, but I want to move forward with that. The only thing left with Dogwood City that I know of is our police uniforms. Still have Dogwood City on them. Rotary Park, in Rotary Park they have Dogwood City on theirs, and I've talked to them about removing that, and they don't have a problem with that. We have one old entry sign on Pittsburgh Road. Probably needs to come down. And I'm going to ask, I believe, Chairman Werren to put that on the legislation to get that out of our, what would it be, the ordinances with that. And that was stressed very strongly at our meetings, that we didn't want to be known as a Dogwood City. No more Dogwoods here. What is a Dogwood City? We want to be simply North Canton. We want to be something that's proud and classic. So that's the next slide, please. And then one of the things, we developed attractive signs for major gateways. These were some of the signage that we had when we started this whole thing. Next slide, please. But we did. We completed that. We can see the old signs and the new one, and people were real proud of that when they come in our city, and they're proud to be in there. Next slide. So that was one of the things. Then next down the road, the transformation of the downtown area into a front door destination. This was a little bit harder. We have a lot of back door entryways in our downtown core because a lot of the parking's back there. And one of the things that the people from the master plan had mentioned was that they'd like to see more of a front kind of in and out, so you see more people walking on the sidewalks and so on. A lot of that, we can encourage that, but a lot of that is about businesses, how they do that. We can encourage them to maybe, kind of combine parking lots, maybe have little alleys that are going, for example, I think right here between, what's that new store, Pinecone and the building, there is a little tiny alley. You can open that up. But little things like that are kind of have good character to them. Somehow we need to get people, around into the front, into the area, and that's something that we're going to need more help from the businesses, and it's not something that we can just come out and do. Okay.
Hey, Mark.
Just keep pushing.
I like where the Pinecone is, that alleyway.
Yeah.
You mean like a court like they do downtown Canton? You mean make it like a little brick pathway or something?
It could be any of those things, right? Yeah, think of it, and it would have to be, in conjunction with the businesses. So we probably need some more of a planning type thing and talk to the people about that. So that's one of the harder ones about it because it is basically on them, and there's not much. It has to have some kind of parking around the back to move around the front. So we just need to test mark it. I'm on the next one. You went ahead. Create a downtown event space such as the amphitheater in Bitzer Park and establish additional year-round programming. Well, that's something that, you know, we're all in favor of. We've talked about that, and I feel real strongly about it, but we need to look at the completion of, and I've said this over and over, completion of the Hoover front lawn. Right now, there's no reason to have anything right there, because there's a lot of construction going on. It could be even more dangerous right now. But then at that point, I'd like to test market a temporary amphitheater. You know, we don't want to jump ahead and put something where it's not going to be used. We need to make sure that it's used, and we can move some temporary thing around, so if we see it's working 1 or 2 years, then hey, that's a good spot for it. If it's not working, when we do put it up, then we shouldn't be putting some permanent thing where it's just going to be left to someone to take care of. So we need to really kind of look at that. But the Rotary is really big. They're kind of pushing to, when can we do this? Let's get going with this. But I think we need to wait a little bit and make sure we get it right. And for my opinion, that it's still on the books to get this thing done, but we need to wait to see what's going on with the Hoover front lawn. Next, please. And then the next one is enhance the downtown green space, such as the lawn in front of the Hoover building and Fitzer Park, and so on. And the city has been pressing hard for a water fountain. That's, you know, we've all been kind of talking about that. There's seating and appropriate lighting in front of the Hoover district. So those talks are ongoing with the IRG folks. Lighting in the trees of Fitzer Park has improved aesthetics, I believe, and that's there year-round. Okay. She's telling me to keep going. Corridors and connections. That's the next kind of area of the phase. Go ahead. Deploy traffic calming measures to slow down traffic on Main Street, and we've had some good discussions about that. And you know, Mike and I have talked plenty about it, the mayor, to maybe do a traffic engineer study. But we want to look at changing the speed limit on Main Street within a certain area of our downtown, so people aren't flying down, because they're flying. If you sat outside, I think Chuck mentioned it one time, if you sat outside on Main Street Grill and eat, you're feet away from people going 40 miles an hour, and that needs to be changed for business sake. We talked about these speed limit signs with the solar, miles per hour. I'm going to ask Chairman Fonte to put that on the list and maybe get that forward with us if you would, because those are really cool. I'd like to see on Main Street, Portage, and East Maple, it would really show people's speed limit compared to what the speed limit is. And I believe those do work in other cities, and we could try those out. And again, with this traffic engineering study, we need to go forward on that about changing the speed limit. So I'd like to see that work. And Mike, you're going to keep me updated on that. You're looking at doing that. And next, please. Okay. On-street parking on Main Street remains a controversial issue. This is what their words of the planning of the master plan. Short-term experience to allow on-street parking in some sections of Main Street. That's exactly what we need to do. We haven't done that, but again, and I keep thinking, I don't want to keep saying we're waiting, but if we're really going to know what our Main Street's going to look like, we got to see how much traffic's going to be there and what it's going to look like in front of the Hoover district. So that's something we need to be prepared for. I said here, the issue has been discussed. It needs to be tested out. The Hoover district front lawn and retail shops are close to completion. Barriers can be put up on weekends and during special hours that can create on-street parking in a 2-lane road, and it kind of to make it go into 2 lanes from possibly Fitzer Park to Charlotte. And then we can get a good idea, is that going to work? And other discussions that they came when we were doing this was, what is there to park for? Because you got the Y, you got the church, you got the city hall, but at least that will allow parking for those areas. And when the Hoover district does go, that's where a lot of people are going to be headed that way. But there are some businesses like Main Street Grill and some of those areas there that would benefit from that. So we need to test that out some way. So that is still on our radar to get that done and maybe give that a try as we get closer to that. Next slide, please. One of the things that we did complete a great system of wayfinding signage that makes the city major destinations more prominent and easier to find. Next slide, please. This is part of consider the showers, the bike lanes and bike paths to better accommodate bicycle traffic. And that's something that is needed, but it's very expensive. And how do we change our roads to do that, by the way? So that's something that I think we need to really look at. I think we also need to look at creating, if you ever go from here to Walsh, at any day of the week, when there's nice, there's people walking and riding their bikes up and down that street. That's a prime example of it. That one should be actually looked at as, can we do something like that? The streets are narrow. I mean, we are where we are. And can we even fix the sidewalks that can create a little bit better not just aesthetics, but safety for going up and down there. I think we should be more proactive in doing that. You know, if you're coming to, and we've ridden our bikes down in North Main Street, the new thing, those sidewalks are so big, you can do anything on those. You don't really need a bike shower on those things, they're so big. So we might want to consider that when we redo that. And I know there's going to be some major changes up there with the University District for Walsh. So there's really, until that, you know, that can be a nice thing to roll into that. But we do need to look at the sidewalks with that because the streets aren't wide enough right now to put some extra bike lane in right now. So we need to look, you know, how we can do that. Next slide, please. And then developmental sites. Established parking strategy for the Hoover District. You know, the parking lots around East Maple have been completed. The new St. Paul's parking lot and the planning stages behind Main Street Grill, that's coming along. And then parking in the front lawn will be present. In the master plan, they did not want that, but they didn't have really any control over that. So that will be present for more parking. And then we are, as we're working on this, the Howard, Whitworth, and Orchard Street, we're working on that right now with the IRG folks. So that part is coming along. And again, that has to be, a lot of that we don't know, but we're seeing some good things from it. The elementary school site of Charlotte for future green space, that was torn down in 2013. Green space doesn't exist there, and North Canton schools control that site for future plans. So we just need to, if we have plans for that, we need to work with them on that. Next, please. The Waterside Center on Main Street is a prime site for future development. It is, you know, it has some constraints right now for technical business only constraints till 2019. So our marketing is ongoing with that, and as a part of the developer and our economic, and I know Eric's had some different bites on it, but they don't meet the criteria right now, the technical. Next slide. Large developmental sites for the golf course, and that is being run out to pay down the debt, so that future use will always be evaluated. Next slide. North Canton has several potential developmental sites. We welcome all developers. A lot of that is dependent on developers. We can talk to them. We already discussed potential ideas for plans for growth. We do need to sit with the developers. Now, real quickly, the following 7 goals. This was also part of the master plan. They're guiding principles. And what has happened over the last 3 or 4 years is really pretty amazing. I mean, when you think of other cities, and some of the things I'm going to show you, how happy they would be to get some of the things that we have here. Sure, we would like this, that, and the other thing. But some of the things that have come our way, whether we rolled the dice and we got luckier or not, or we're just a really nice city that people want to be here. Not only want to be here, but they want to stay here longer by adding on to some of the enhancements. So let's move through that there. These are some of the things I work with Eric. There might be something left out, so you know, just kind of a brainstorming. These are some of the new development opportunities that came our way. And, you know, you're talking about the YMCA chat. This is for the last 3 or 4 years. Development in North Main, that's the building up there with the TD Tailgates, Jimmy John's, Little Caesars, the eye clinic on Portage, Earache took over our insurance. Next slide. John Apolopoulos, dentist, Daniel Vascular Institute, and Akron Children's at the North Canton Medical, Peter Pit, Winking Lizard, Main Street Boutique, Verizon, Great Clips. I mean, this goes on. Ohio Tank Specialist, that's the former Spitzers. You know, and they have 36 employees over there. The new Pine Cone, Edward Jones, Western Found, Flex Building, Troy's Toy Kingdom, Ocean Rift, and Grable Funeral. These are some of the expansion. When you talk about expansion, these are people that say, I like it here, I want to stay here, and I'm going to add here. That's sometimes even a bigger, you know, kind of feather in your cap because they're happy here and they want to, and when they add on, that means they have people usually, and that means more income. So we look at Giant Eagle, and if you really want to know, I mean, these are millions of dollars add-ons. We talked to Eric about that. Walsh University, the remodeling of discount drug, expansion of the brand out dentistry, Brookwood Management, Zambino's, Windsor, Dalton, North Canton Medical, formerly North Canton Medical Foundation. And now future development that we're looking at, we do have some residential areas that are coming our way with the Sanctuary, the next phase 28 lots, the Monticello, 25 to 30 lots, Hoover District, of course, the Waterside, and Apple Grove. We got, you know, Walter's Cafe is ongoing with there. So, I mean, that's a pretty good list, and I think any city would love to have that. So kudos to the people coming this way, kudos to our city, and the people who take care of it. Next week. And so also, we define the resources, the identity of North Canton. I mean, when we think of the identity of North Canton, when people walk in there, what's North Canton like, what is it? Okay, we have our entry markers, our directional signs, the East Maple corridor now with the brick, the stone, the iron fencing, which we hopefully to carry that through to the entire city as one of the aesthetics. The guard shack was good, it was maintained. Price Park parking lot, that eco-storm water collection, that is just gorgeous, that's beautiful. When people come to our parks, they see that, they see first class. The Dogwood shelter improvements with the stone, I mean, you wish we had 2 or 3 of those. The introduction of the Christmas tree, how nice that is. The Whitmer tennis courts, Price Park ball fields, and we're at other ball fields that are going to be even worked on even more this year. Civic center improvements, city pool management with the Y, and the pool improvements and water filtration system that comes through this year. People will see that. For the future, and it looks even better. You got the Hoover District front lawn fountain. I'm really excited about that. I think that would really make our downtown look cool. The University District at Walsh, those of you who don't know about that, that's going to be a big deal. And it's going to really kind of change that whole atmosphere down there. The West Maple Street widening, we're going to maintain the same aesthetics down through Ream, I believe it is. Then this is a project here we just started with the lighting on South Main Street. Some people say you're out of light bulbs, but we recently turned off every other light down there, so we can see if the lighting works. And if it does work for us, we'll try to replace those lights with the little balls, ballers. Not the one that you're seeing. I think we're going to have to change that. But those lights will shine light on the sidewalk, so you not only have less airport runway lights, but you'll have the nice lights that show up on the sidewalk. And I think that's something we're looking at. And it could come to fruition, but I think we need to talk about that a lot more. But that's exciting. St. Paul's parking lot, street trees, 60 to 100 trees planted. And the Main Street beautification program, we're working on that with flower pots at intersections. And then the stone accent to bridges. And Jim's already set it up for East Hill, but we'd like to see that any time the bridge is finished, we need to set that up with stone. This is also the connectivity with bicycle song, we're going to enhance the access to Star Park trails. That's been ongoing, and we need that completed. Bike trails versus sidewalks, again, as I talked about. Proactive sidewalk improvement in those high traffic areas is something that we can do and we need to look at, especially the Walsh corridor. Next slide. And then redefine the city's core of regional destinations. Where are people going? You got Washington Square, the university down there, the business sector. The Hoover District ongoing, look at all the people that are in here. Rural Work Wisconsin, Penn, Schroeder Group, Sanctuary, Marketing, True Bridge, Myers Control. I mean, that's terrific. Would we be saying those words 5, 6, 7 years ago? I mean, that's wonderful. North Main Street, business sector, the new development up there on North Main, raising the Charlotte building with the green space. That's a developmental site that wasn't there 2 or 3 years ago. Redevelopment of the YMCA Child Care Center, Old Hummels, and North Canton School and their athletic facilities. So we really do have a lot happening. What about the future? The Hoover District does have a lot of square foot left. Eric was giving me some numbers there, and the Walsh's new University District will be another, we enhance that whole area. All right, so the last couple here is opportunities for recreation and really the social interaction that we have, and we've got a lot, due to a lot of people's work. The library family events have been a big deal. The Main Street Festival has just been terrific. Collaboration with the Y, North Canton Pool, 4th of July race, Memorial Day, JC Fair, Christmas tree lighting, running events, concerts in the park, and improvements to our parks, tennis courts. I mean, that's just some fantastic things. A lot of people working on that. Future, amphitheater, and the pool improvements. That should, when people come around, they see that kind of stuff. That looks like what the future will look like. Okay. Accommodation, the needs, the preference of, for residents, whether they're getting older, housing options. What has been happening with St. Luke's expansion, the Sanctuary Grand Project, those are assisted living areas there that we have a high population of people want to stay in this area. The Northridge Apartments, the Walsh University growth, the strong housing stock, and a variety of homes. I can ask maybe Don. The house does not last very long here in North Canton, and that is a variety of homes that we have there. So when you're looking for a house here, whether you're looking for a home that's a 2-bedroom bungalow, or if you're looking for a higher thing, they go real fast here, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And I wish we had more area with that. So North Canton Medical Foundation in Alton, now is Alton. Active Children's Ambassador and Vane Institutes over there, and then your eye clinic. So for the different age groups and populations, there's a lot there. Hopefully in the future, the district departments, the Hoover District departments, and the sanctuaries, and the Monticello's residential. So I think we're coming to the end here, so take a deep breath. Some of the, also they talked about is some flooding concerns. Well, it's been a long road with that, but the Zimmer ditch, the home removals was a big deal, and it took a lot of work for a lot of people to do that, and some funding. And then Price Park, Eco, that's just, I put that down here, that's just an example of being proactive about the whole thing. In the future here, we have to evaluate the drainage system, and what's the next big problem, what's the priorities, and we know they'll come, and we'll have to handle that situation. So, in review of this, and there's one more slide after that later, but the North Canton is still a very great place to live, learn, work, and play, and we just proved that. There's a lot of things going on. Now, here's the thing, and I'm not going to just go down. This is what we have left of the master plan. There's still, I made the list of the things we got to do, like completion of the Dogwood, the taglines, the transformation downtown to a front door, the amphitheater, enhanced downtown green space, like the water fountain, deploy traffic calming measures, on-street parking, proactive sidewalk repair or the bike channels, and then continue the parking strategies, Orchard Street and so on, that's ongoing. And then pursue development options of Charlotte Street, Waterside. There's an area there down there by Kmart, the Stratland Kmart site that we want to take a look at that and see what's going on. Eric's got some bites on that every now and then. People ask about it. Create a developmental summit to welcome potential future development opportunities. We need a summit with our developmental people around here to come in and say, hey, we want you here. Give us some ideas. We'll work with them. And I believe we have one more slide. So, this plan is about continuing to add and change this list as we see necessary for the betterment of our community. But one of my favorite sayings here is that the greatest danger in life is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. So let's keep our levels high about what we want to do here. We have a really good city, we have a good plan, we want to add to it, I'm all for that, of course. We can, if it's realistic and specific. And that's it. Was there any more slides to that? Okay, that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
I like the idea of doing a test market with a temporary amphitheater. And I know you mentioned with the construction going on next door, would you anticipate the test being done sometime this summer, or do you want to wait until that's completely
well,
year?
I don't know if I want to make that call. What are they going to be doing over there? They're going to get going on if they've got a bunch of stuff going on there, we can't really do that. I mean, it depends, I think, also on the audience that you're going to have up there. You're going to have a bunch of little kids up there looking at stuff and everything. We've got to almost shut down West Maple for something big because you don't want them running, across if there's things going on there. If it's a good supervision, if it's not a big deal, we put that back in the corner away from the road. That's that would be, you got good supervision. I don't see any issues with that, but I'm very leery about that because one of the things about when we have concerts in the future, this is just Mark's view, is the beauty of it. You can be able to cross. Hopefully, there'll be some restaurants in the Hoover district along the Main Street Road. I'm not going to put that on. And people can cross roads and go back and forth, and we probably have to have some sort of supervision as far as crossing roads, or we close East Maple Street during that time. Have a little road, and so people can cross back and forth to the restaurants and everything, over to the park, or to the concert, so that put some barriers up there. That's kind of what I see. That's Mark's vision of some cool things downtown. If we want some small things, like the library put on some really cool things with Whitworth. I mean, that was a great site over there. I don't even know why we changed it, but that would look also cool down there. But that's a lot of kids. We have to have some good supervision there. I wouldn't want to put us in harm's way with some of the things going on down there.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Whitworth, because that's why I asked the question. Because
Yeah.
there is a group of folks that feel that should be in Price Park.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a bad idea to test that to see what kind of crowds you would get out of Whitworth down there.
Yeah. I think that was always discussed. The reason that we always kind of wanted downtown was to bring everything to the downtown. That it would kind of feed the restaurants and everything. It could be, it could be more adult concerts too, right? I mean, it's not just all children. There's a lot of things that people want to come, and it depending, of course, on. And we're saying this is hearsay kind of thing. What kind of stuff's going to be in the front of the work company? What kind of like commercial stuff? Would be shops, and then people would go and shop and then go over to the, or maybe in the afternoon, just have a little band kind of play in there, a weekend or something. People can just be careful about crossing the roads. That's something we'll have to work out with that crossing, and so Mark doesn't have a real answer to that, but it's a lot of things we should be thinking about and looking ahead with.
Well, testing the on-road or off-sidewalk parking with a reduced speed limit would help that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
So I was envisioning, when I hear amphitheater, I think this big thing with a bunch of seating and all that, but wouldn't it be more just like a stage type, a smaller stage, and people would just use the seating, bring their chairs or sit on the, use a blanket to sit on the, it wouldn't be like.
You're talking about here?
Yeah, like we did that over by the YMCA.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be a smaller facility and it would just, house whoever, adults, kids, whatever?
Yes, the original plan, and Bill and I were big on this, there was that we would put that back in the corner, and you have almost a little amphitheater already from behind the memorial. It goes downhill. And we've been to other amphitheaters where they actually put like stone seating there, but enough you can cut grass around it, so it's not an issue with cutting grass. But it's kind of like it's got its own little kind of stadium kind of seating kind of thing where people could sit at least on one side, and then they would bring chairs to put on the other. So we could form something depending on the use of it if it's back in there, kind of thing. Does that answer your question about seating?
Yeah, originally I was thinking like this big amphitheater.
Oh, no, it'll be a stage. Really, the amphitheater, when I say an amphitheater, it's a stage, kind of a nice, good-sized stage. Maybe it has a roof over it.
Like when you look at Price Park, they have little
pavilions.
I picture something like that that's maybe just elevated a little bit, and then the Y would be close enough that we could organize it so there's always activities, different activities going on.
I think it's going to be important to get drawings. I saw some that were like a picture, and they kind of said this is what it's going to look like, and it did kind of look like a shed. And honestly, I don't want a shed down by the YMCA. I don't know if anyone's been to downtown Medina and some other cities, but you can use that natural kind of landscape, but you want it to look
classy.
And with what the Hoover's plan is going to do.
And we will.
We don't know that at this point. And we didn't just spend all this money on West Mapleton to make it kind of look like that, where you're, there's a lot of drawings that probably need to happen. And we aren't the experts. Again, I think we need to remember that. We aren't architects. We aren't landscape architects. We don't know traffic and flow. And so we really have to, I think, spend money and take a little bit more time to say, what is that going to look like and what's that going to fit? And see, I know they're anxious. I know the Rotary and the Y are anxious, and it's been kind of sitting on the back burner, but we want to do this right.
Right, and we've had some drawing, but until we find out what the front looks like, what goes with it, and we'll do it right. I mean, that's what we do. Any other questions?
Yeah, good points. Aesthetically, you want it to look nice on all sides.
Yeah, all sides, right.
And we know West Maple. I think it's a good idea, but we need to test it. We want to invest, but you might draw so many people that it might not be the perfect spot for a larger venue. Right, and you got to be careful of that. Because I've been involved with some of that we're working out. And we want it to be successful, obviously, if we're going to use it. Great presentation, Mark. The only thing I was going to add, Charlotte Street here, or where they tore down the old way school, that's not opportunity. I really think we should work together with the school on that. It's a greenway area that we can take advantage of, because hopefully, when this is all developed, as we've discussed, 10 years down the road, hopefully there's, 80 apartments and there's commercial and everybody's walking around and we don't want to park. Well, I don't know where to park. We got to make sure that we include that in our plans here as far as a green space and open space, or somewhere just to commute. People do park and try to get over to Main Street or East and West Maple. One thing I wanted to add, I know we've discussed it, I think there's support on this, is the 40 road corridor. As far as a gateway into the city has to be addressed. I think we have to put some money here this year for engineering and see how we're going to fund this in the future. It's too important of a residential corridor just to let go. A lot of people come through it. We have some challenges there with some of the houses, but I think overall it's going to be a beautiful gateway into the city. So make sure we don't forget about that.
I completely agree and support that.
I know you.
That's something to add on to our master plan. That's the idea here. We add on to it. We keep moving with it. It's a moving target. Randy, would you like to come up and say? Randy has been real instrumental in this. He was on the committee and of course with TAP and everything, so he's been keeping his eye on the ball on this, and he kind of got me going with this. Actually, a couple of things going, Randy.
The master plan is just that. It's a master plan. It's kind of a draft of things that could happen in this community. I think when you hear the term the master plan, it's a master plan. It's dynamic. It's constantly changing. I think when Bill Strominger, he chaired the master plan committee for us about 40 years ago. And as part of that, he brought a collaborative group of people together. You know, people from all different parts of the community, all different interests, representing all different, you know, facets of what makes this community great. And, you know, we were talking about this back in December, and the question was, what's happening with the master plan? What's going on? I think if we could encourage the administration in any way and the council just to say, keep your eyes on the master plan. We recognize it's dynamic. We recognize, too, that you are part-time stewards of this community. And many times you feel like full-time stewards of this community. But I think the other part that stands out about this is the fact that you don't have to do it, you know, all by yourself. The thing I'd encourage you to do is collaborate. You have resources all around you that can help you. You know, for example, even on something as simple as the amphitheater. You know, we've got architects in this community. We've got Matt Sutter from Solera State right down the street here. He said, what would it take for us to build an amphitheater in our community? I'm sure there's concepts that they could come up with, or they could give you ballpark figures. They could give you big, they could give you small. They could talk to you about like what's feasible. And I think those are things we need to consider, because the one thing Mark talked about at the very end was the Michelangelo quote about don't shoot too high, don't shoot too low. Issue for us is dream big. There's things that we could do in our community that could make us it's special in Stark County, more so than we already are, but things that would be an attractional feature of our community. And I think we need to think about that. So, Stephanie.
And you brought up a great point. I think when you talk about thinking big, and this is a lot of synergy that's going on right now, from the Canton plan to what the airport's doing to the Hall of Fame. And there isn't any reason where we should not be pegging on to that. When you talk about a destination and you talk about what Visit Canton is going to do and the tourist shows that they're at, we have to be a part of that. And so if we're just another subset where they say, oh, we have to take a picture in downtown Canton, but up in North Canton, they also have that, then we need to somehow get on board with that. And because they're not looking at it as just downtown. I mean, David Baker has huge, big dreams, and he wants us to be a part of that. You know, and so I think that needs to be part of something that we're included in.
Absolutely.
Because those tourism dollars aren't just for downtown Canton.
Absolutely.
The county is looking at that, you know, countywide.
It's interesting because what I do vocationally takes me to all parts of Stark County and some of our contiguous counties. And the thing that stands out to me most is that the communities that are most successful, and I would say communities that I'm in that do a great job from an economic development standpoint, Alliance is a community. They're extremely collaborative with their schools, with their hospitals, with just the businesses in their community. I realize we don't have all the resources that they might have in Alliance as far as we don't have a hospital, we don't have maybe some of the businesses or the mass that they have, but they collaborate really well with each other. They communicate amongst themselves well. Places like Greene, Ohio, Medina, Ohio, Worcester, Ohio, these are all communities that they just seem like they play really well together and they use each other, to accomplish their goals and objectives. And, I guess as I would say, just as I look at the way the administration and the council works together, that's fantastic here in North Canton. You guys work together well. You listen to it seems to me like you listen to each other well, and you're all kind of pulling in the same direction. But what I'd say is beyond just yourselves, make sure you're reaching into the community. Make sure you're talking to developers, because if you've got a plot of land that needs to be developed, bring in 3 or 4 developers. Ask the best case, what could this be? How could this be designed and developed in a way that would be efficient for our community? The only other thing I'd comment on, think about some of the communities you drive through where there's all kinds of blight and eyesores. A lot of that stuff occurred because you had city officials who were just numb and weren't paying attention. And so I would just say, make sure that you're very vigilant about what gets developed in our community. It is better for us to not develop something than to develop it poorly. And I think we've seen some of our own developers in our community who show that kind of discipline as well. So those are just some of the observations that I have. Thanks.
One other thing too, Stu Lichter is doing this facility, and he's also doing the whole thing. So there should be some tie in there to say, well, gosh, if they're doing it there, could we tie in that and bring it here? So there's some synergy, there's something of that collaborative measure that's working.
I just don't want Stu to forget about us,
Right.
I want to.
I don't think you will, and I think Doug Lane has a better idea about that because he's really close to the situation. But what I would say that, Stu's doing the best. He gets his hands on a lot of different projects. And I think all of us see that just about every day in the paper that, he's bought another campus. The big issue for us is we can't wait for him to develop our city. We have to be proactive and do that ourselves. And I think the chamber's been very, vigilant about that and forthright as well. I do think, though, that that's something, Stephanie, that's a legitimate concern.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I was just going to make a comment too. I was talking to my dad the other day about frustration that I have about certain things not being accomplished, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, it's good to turn around and look at how much water is behind the boat. And I think it's important for us to do that too, to say, hey, we look at it and say, as we drive by, my little ones the other day, we drove by the North campus and they said, my 10-year-old said, how come those apartments aren't done yet? And I just laughed and I said, well, I would convey your frustration to the people who were there. It's like, but think for a moment about, I was over in Youngstown a couple of weeks ago. They've got empty facilities over there that have been vacant for 40 years. And we're frustrated because, the apartments that are going to house hundreds of people aren't quite done in the time that we would love them to be done. So that's important. I'd also say, we talked about on the call that we did with S&P last week, we talked about all of this economic development that has taken place. It's easy for us to look and say, oh, there's still empty spaces, and there definitely are. But think about that list that you quickly read through, 3 pages long, and think about how much we've given away to get that accomplished. Virtually nothing. Almost all those people said, hey, whether you're going to give us money or time or whatever, we want to be with you. I mean, Doug mentioned it at the chamber dinner, 490 members for the chamber, which is fantastic. I mean, that's getting back up to the numbers where the chamber was at a long time ago. So there's a lot to be celebrated, and I think we need to do that as well.
There was a business that was mentioned that night, Squirrel. And to think that, do you know them, Jessica? You ever heard of them? And that was really a fun story because they're a new business, they're young, their CEO is 28. How many people do they have, Doug? Is it 20?
30, I think it's 36.
Yeah, and to think that, so they were one of the businesses that were awarded at the chamber dinner. But to see a young business like that, with these young entrepreneurs, and they're tech savvy, and Eric was telling me about another project that might be going on with them, and to see that innovation here, it could really bring in a lot of other people. And he was so neat. He goes, he listed all the restaurants that they eat at. He said, we fly in and out of the Acton Airport. We do this, and it was just so refreshing. And so sometimes people think that we are an older community and we're not moving forward, but you have some of these new businesses to really show we are. We have all different kinds of businesses. So, it's good.
Okay, thank you. Keep working on that.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, moving on. Ordinance rules and claims. Chairwoman Werren.
So this, and we talked about it, oh gosh, probably a couple times. I know that we've mentioned it, about looking at different ways that maybe we can save money and still have quality services, and just some different ways of looking at different areas and collaborating with different units. So one area is possibly the dispatch center. And we have run some numbers before, and I've had Tim look at some numbers, and they know it was in the paper last week. We can't was even looking at it. And quite honestly, we're one of 3, ourselves, Alliance, and Canton, that still have solo dispatch centers. A lot of the other areas have merged together with, I think we have 3 different options now that we could have people supply bids for. And so that's really all I'm looking at to say this is an area where we actually could reduce our costs. In a couple of years, there's going to be a lot of equipment costs that are going to be mandatory across the board, and they're going to be very expensive. And so are we kind of moving forward and saying, hey, let's look at these costs now and get ahead of it before it's mandated, and then our people maybe won't even have the necessary skills to move into these other jobs. One of the Perry Township trustees is a friend of mine, and he walked me through the process that they did last year because they were looking at some different ways to cut costs. And they saved a lot of money. And at this point, none of the dispatch lost their jobs. They were all moved into other service centers. And it was interesting, and their dispatch centers, some of them weren't even from Perry Township, and they were just people that had jobs. So they continued to have their jobs. Service safety said has been fine. They haven't had any real problems. No citizens were not upset. So it's just a different avenue. I don't know if you realize costs at this point, but for salaries alone, it's probably, I know it is, it's close to $500,000. And so when you look at that, is that an area that lends itself? Is it just $10,000? I have no idea. To look at it and say, this is what someone else is going to cost us. And we would have to probably look at some things differently. Everybody right now, if I'm right, Mike, they call it dispatch dispatch, whether there's a cat in the tree, or if they want to know when we're meeting, or, I mean, a lot of calls go to dispatch. So it would be maybe a training where they would have to call Justine. But if it was a true savings and it worked for our city and we weren't reducing services, it's something we have to look at. I want to meet with both chiefs. This isn't something obviously we wouldn't do without their support. And I know there's going to be a lot of public meetings and with the support of the community, but at this point it's just looking for some bids.
Stuff, I think, I look at anything that we need to put together. If we really want to look at this, what are the pros, what are the cons, cost savings? We need a lot of numbers before we jump into this.
Right, we're not in those space, we don't have those numbers. I mean, I have some numbers that we can look at to say these are the amount of calls, this is the price, these are the costs that we have for the wages. I have a lot of those numbers. But we have to move something. We have to start at least looking at things to say this is the comparison. And I mean, we can look at other areas to say, this is the calls per minute it takes to get to a house, and see other areas are saying, yeah, we're really lacking services now. But I'm not reading that on the front page of the paper. I'm not seeing that call times are delayed because they're using a county-wide system. And you have to also think how much technology has increased since there were all these individual dispatch centers. I mean, we all can get on our phones these days and say where to go. So I have a lot of information we could give you, but I'd like to start the process. I think we talked about it. I know last year we talked about this, and Tim had shown us some numbers last year.
Steph, when Perry Township looked for and received bids for that, it was just the Red Center and it was Michelle,
I
correct?
think the two of them, right?
So what we can do is simply open it up and request bids, and it very well may be Red Center, CENTCOM, there may be others. Some communities, because every community needs some sort of 911 type of system, some do it differently and collaborate with each other. For example, City of Worcester and Alliance have worked together, and they've modeled a form of small government to manage dispatch services for both cities, and they share those types of services together. That's for them. But between CENTCOM and Red Center, some of them have more than 20 municipalities that participate, and they're able to achieve a cost savings from having to purchase one set of equipment and be able to route those calls through and send out emergency services. And the legislation for this, make note that it's different than we've done in the past. It doesn't say request bids and then authorize the mayor to sign a contract with the board of control. This simply says request bids. This is only out there to get the information, because people do ask those questions. What would it cost? We're not quite sure.
Right.
Because we would rather have businesses that do this professionally compete for our business and say we can do it just as good for this amount. And when you ask for bids, that's what happens.
And we just haven't ever asked. I know we've talked about it, but I think that we owe it to our public to say, let's just get the bids and just say these are the costs. And then I think, Mark, that's when you say these are the pros and the cons.
Right.
If they're saying they can do it just as well, can they? Can they really? Do they know our community? What our dispatch right now? When they all have jobs, and we would want to look at all that, and we would say, is it a significant difference, or is it just 10,000? Does it save the police space? They're crowded. Does it help them? Is it something where they would see as a benefit? We would want to ask all those questions, but I think right now this just starts the process and really kind of.
I mean, I think that's interesting, but I mean, I'm not for it to do something because it's a nice to do thing. We want to collaborate just to collaborate. It has to be like the mayor says. It has to be. I think we say it has to be cost effective and it has to maintain the same services that we have. And
Well, and those are the two things I think I said significantly. I mean, and when you look, I think you have to also look ahead and say equipment and costs. I mean, all that has to factor into it. And Doug and I have even talked costs, and knowing those costs are coming, we'd have to say, like, we know there's gonna be costs, you know, what would be then their threshold to say, and then you're gonna have these increased costs as well, so.
I've always said when this topic's come up, where I'm hanging out, I don't want to go to B minus, just a collaboration. That might seem selfish, but I think we look to our taxpayers, not to reduce our services or, you know, our quality of life. I mean, I'm here to look at it, though. That's good. You should look
And
at
I
it.
think sometimes too,
Right.
cost becomes a factor, because what you might want as an A, you might say, well, okay, but boy, it's going to save us $300,000, and they're willing to take a B plus. I mean, we do that in our own personal budgets, you know we do. And so I think we have to recognize that, but right now, we don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Just gathering information.
That's all. I think the other thing is, we need to look and say too, we may think the way we do is ideal, but Reed is a good example where we thought, well, we might sacrifice potentially a little bit of service for a good return on investment. What we're finding is, we're gonna get even more service than we ever would be able to get on the right. So, I mean, I think we have a fiduciary obligation to look at it and say, does this make sense or not?
And it may come out that
It doesn't.
we do it the most
Right.
efficient way possible. And when you look at grants that are available, the ones that I'm seeing are looking for collaboration, especially in that area where grants are available for those types of equipment purchases for safety services. But there's an enhancement there where you show collaboration in your community, that you may be the one that's out there right now that I saw recently, tops out at no more than $100,000 for a municipality. But if you're going to collaborate and perhaps learn services, then they can certainly offer enhanced grants that are available. So it's clear that the state agencies are seeing this as potential ways where municipalities can collaborate and reduce costs by having a set of services that it should be indistinguishable when someone makes a 911 call, where it goes, who they speak with, and who they send out. And if it's not, then it very well may not be in our best interest. But this puts it to rest for those that we get hammered for those questions. Why aren't you collaborating? How are you, of all the municipalities in Stark County, there's only 3 that have their own dispatch services, and we're one of them.
So how would we, do we put this on the agenda for next week, or just we get bids, or?
Well, we need an ordinance to authorize
Okay.
receiving bids, and I do have a question. Mike, if you mentioned there's going to be, with the advancing technology, there's going to be an upgrade of equipment and technology. Mike, you were looking for, you're going to put it out for bid using the current technology now. How would you address the possible cost of that? Say, for example, that we get the bids and we're going to save some money. We're going to save a significant amount of money, and we decide to do this. Then we get, a letter from them saying we need this upgraded equipment, and here's your cost. You don't have any say in it, but here's your cost. How is that? I'm curious how that's going to work.
Yeah, first, the bid's going to be complicated because there's so much into it other than that. The second thing is, don't assume that we're low on the totem pole. We're advanced. We have better equipment than the rest of them.
Right.
We're the ones that decided to go to Marks before the rest of them jumped. We've done all that. So I got a little problem when, you say there's better stuff out there. I don't think so. The other thing you got to know is you are going to get a little bit of a degrading service, because when you have the dispatch sitting 15 steps from where the police chief is running it, and now we have it somewhere else, you're going to get a little bit different. You covered the calls. That's a big thing because you get charged by the call. In North Canton, some of our calls are not considered real police calls, and we're going to have an issue on that. You're going to have to decide what service we're going to offer downstairs, because is somebody going to come here at night and there's nobody here for them? How are we going to make that? Are we going to have somebody here for them? Are we going to have a safe room because somebody's going to see the police department sign, come here? Are we going to have a safe room they can run into and then call to be safe? I mean, there's some of those things that we can work out. Everything can be worked out, but It's just a matter of looking at all that. Down the road, you sign a 3 or 5 year contract. Once you throw the switch here, it's hard to turn it back on. So yeah, they've got you on some of that. Check, not with the architect, to me, of who decided to make the move, because you don't always, to me, get the full story. You know, find out from the people whether that was a good move, not a good move. I think some of the dispatchers are no longer there. I think there was an issue there. So there's some issues that you gotta work through. But we will look at all that. But yeah, our equipment, because they were talking about.
I was talking about equipment for 2 years. They said everybody's going to have to upgrade. And I've talked to, I think, 3 different places that have said that. You know,
Maybe
we can't
upgrade
get
to
one
Mark's
that's-
system.
yeah.
Word marks, our radio's too high band and low band.
But the other, they be upgraded into our level.
I've been out of it, and I don't talk to them anymore for those reasons. We've got our own downstairs, but I can, but, you know, we went through this with the county-wide originally, and, you know, you just gotta look and see what services you're getting. You gotta see how that fits into yours. They talk about CAD, which is computer-aided dispatch. That's nice that you got a call that goes out, but then you have to have a record management system too. You have to keep track of all that. So do we need our own? Are we gonna be able to have them, you know, interface with us, which they probably can, but there's gonna be maybe a cost for that, and we have to see what we do. Our MDTs, our mobile data terminals out in the car, can we communicate on that? First, you got coverage, you gotta make sure that you have the adequate coverage, and, you know, things like fire. We have part-time fire department, so we set up the pagers and all that, so we gotta make sure their equipment talks to our equipment. So we can look at all that. It's just going to take a little while.
Yeah, it's not just a simple, and other communities have gone through the same task, and it's a lot, but I think it's just the process we have to start.
Well, I'm gonna say there's not a person in this room who knows any more than you.
Oh, there probably is, but I just
Do we need a consultant to look at that? Because we surely are not experts at this in any way.
I would look at it. I've got 4 contracts that I've got to do before June. I've got 2 contract issues I'm working through with some folks that I don't think are, you know, up to our standards. We've got 3 negotiation unions that we're doing, so this is going to take some time because it does. So if I need someone to go out and do that, I'll have to let you know to run some of that down. The county has 2 people on their payroll, you know, as consultants, full-time, I think, or, you know, running with them on this. So.
I mean, someone can look at ours, look what's there and say, hey, this is what you need, or you guys are so far ahead, just like you said, so.
The administrator makes a good point, and we have to make sure we factor in costs that we wouldn't normally contemplate that we would need dispatch. As he said, 24/7, holidays, 365, dispatch will pick up the call, and we'll have to decide what are we going to do after hours, and in those times, are we going to have someone that will take those calls, or some places use, you know, when it's not a 911 call, but they want to call the city for a question, when does, you know, Halloween,
But don't you think that's so
or the
far
hour.
down the line? I mean, don't write those questions that we would kind of,
Right, it's just something that, you know, he threw in that wouldn't necessarily contemplate in an additional cost. But we will have to cover those non-emergency calls when people call in. Now they have someone that answers the phone. What will we do with that? Will we have someone that will take those calls, those non-emergency? Because you don't want those to go to those CENTCOM, because they're going to charge, normally for the bid, it's a per call fee. And so we don't want a call that would go there and they're asking, where can I get
well, and like I said,
dog license?
there's a lot of other communities that have before
Right.
this, and we can see what they're doing. But
See how they do.
change is always difficult, no matter what. Small change, accounting changes, changes in drivers for snow removal, it all is challenging. But it's just kind of.
We should take a look at everything.
Look at the numbers.
Christian's great, let's look at it.
Just a comment. You know, first off, Stephanie, I appreciate you bringing this up, because really what I'm hearing is that the council is looking at this really to do a comprehensive evaluation. So we get the bids or the cost of providing services. But I can, you know, Mike has been through this evaluation, like I think 3 times or 4 times. And so he's been through this a number of times, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go through it again. Because as you had mentioned, Stephanie, that technology changes. There can be trends change, there's enhancement of services. And so what's important is that we as a city evaluate this objectively so that we can say, yes, what we're doing is the best, or what we're doing can improve, or is there an opportunity to collaborate with our neighbors to improve the services. And as Councilman Cerreta had mentioned, our goal has always been here at the city, number one, bring jobs to North Canton, and just as importantly, to provide and to improve cost-efficient and effective service. And as we go through this and we get the bids, what's going to take time is the evaluation. It's real easy to get the price.
Right.
We can get that in a couple of weeks. But what we've learned is that even going through that, I think we've learned a lot through.
I can get a price, I'm
No, but I mean, getting the price is, you just call up the different agencies and they identify this is what their cost per call is and so forth. But I think the tough part is really evaluating the process of implementing that. So it's, that is not an easy thing to do. And we've learned through the 3 or 4 times that we've evaluated this, just identifying what is an emergency call. That in and of itself, when we were looking at how many calls Alliance gets, or the city of North Canton gets, we could not compare the number of calls because each municipality had evaluated their calls differently. And so, and then, as our law director mentioned too, we're a 24/7 police department in that we operate, we have shifts, 24/7 here. And we also have a station that's manned 24/7, whereas some police departments, they don't necessarily have, a manned 24/7. So what would the cost be to continue to have that manned and then continue to have the dispatch closer to the location? So what I'm hearing is that we will get the costs, and then, but it's going to take some time to evaluate it. It's not like Mike's going to be able to turn around with the police chief, or the police department, and the fire department, and the EMS department.
Right.
Because it affects three different services that we have here. And it also impacts our street and water. So it's really got to be a comprehensive approach. But I think really the reason that this is, one of the reasons that it's bad for Mike and the administrative personnel is because it does take time and requires more work. As you can see, he's already, really bogged down just with contracts alone. So you can see where it's not something he's really excited about.
Right.
And evaluating, more work. But at the same time, in some, I would say, over the next, the remainder of the year, it will allow us to evaluate it, and then we can rightly defend whether we should
I agree.
move forward to the next level or not, and then, we would have to be able to reasonably justify the next step.
I agree, it's just a starting point.
But I'll get you the information, I won't skew it one way or the other, I would just, get you everything in 30 days and try to figure out all the intricacies. Fire is pretty easy to move, I think I can move that already at about $89,000, $90,000 a year. That's a simpler department to move out, so it'll be the police and what we expect and what we want back from it, and what we're going to do downstairs for the citizens, what service or amount of service are we going to get?
Well, and do we know how many people, do they keep track of how many people come in on the weekends? And how many people that is?
Walk up, they won't. It'll be a call for service, but we'll know how many.
Okay.
It's even like, when somebody's coming in for a police report, or,
Well, maybe there would be an average though, just say, again, sometimes we look at that and say, well, 4 people came in this month, is it worth X dollars, or is there a different way?
yeah.
And we run things before where we've had, dispatcher just keeps a checklist, and we know how many people walk up to ask something or call or something,
Yeah.
so we can do that.
Okay.
When it's just a walk up and they're asking for something basic, so.
And aren't there some municipalities that use different agencies? One they may use for fire and other for police. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, we have to take everything from one agency. We may perhaps start with one, as he mentioned, May, because is it Nimishilin is our backup? Or if we go down, so we have them, if we do that for our service. But yes, indeed, some municipalities find a better cost saving using one service, and maybe only just for fire, and use their own dispatch for police, and some just divide it out because it worked better for them. So that's another thing to consider.
But you're probably at the right time to look at it again because of the equipment we have. We have good equipment that enables us if we have to move. And then probably in the next 4 years, I'm guessing, I haven't talked to the chief, but just from what I know about the equipment, you're probably going to have to look for a dispatch console at some point. So it's probably a good time to look at it.
And since I've been here, we've never looked over it. So it's been 4 years, and I don't know how.
Well, also, when you look at when you're merging services and so forth, one example which was really easy for the council and administration to agree on is when we looked at our swimming pool.
Yeah.
You know, what made it so easy is that you've got one of the top YMCA's in the country right here in the city. They know how to run pools. And so taking our city pool system and asking the YMCA to run it, that's really not a tough decision. And I think it's obviously been illustrated this past year. Now, the thing that we had to consider was the cost. The service has been great, the safety has been great, but the cost is another thing that had to be evaluated, and it's obviously worked very well. So it all depends on what the status is of the services that we provide. We know we're very proud of our police, fire, and EMS. We're going to be getting our survey results here in the next month, which will be very good. I think you'll find them to be very impressive, although all the data's not in yet. And but it's just a matter of what type of service, its cost efficiency and effectiveness, and try to keep that balance. So, but just so that the council members are aware, it's going to take some time. It won't take time, a whole lot of time to get the bids,
We are aware.
but the evaluation of that will take some time.
Okay. So I move that we put it on the agenda for next week.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, next up is finance and property, Chairman Griffith.
All right, so we had budgeted $25,000 as a plug for any additional needs this year for zero reach money that may become available, and some has become available. Fortunately, it's well less than the $25,000 that we plugged. So there's a request for $13,283.52, which is our portion of the movement that's there. Actually, this weekend I was at Fred's house in Linwood, and I was asking him a lot about how the season was and how things had gone, and he was very happy, very pleased. So, I mean, I don't want to say anything that's going to jinx us, but it seems like the plan is working and things are moving in the right direction. So, I think it's a worthwhile investment for all of us for the quality of life that we all enjoy as well. Thoughts or questions relative to distribution?
I believe what this is going to let happen is one or two more houses are going to be able to be purchased in the floodplain and be taken down and returned to its natural state. It's going to give perhaps one or two homeowners some relief.
Chairman, I'd ask that it be placed as emergency because they can't go forward asking for the funds unless they have our.
Well, there's no objection to that. I think that's fine. So we'll have that on the agenda for Monday as well.
Mark and I went to White Oak and the agenda just discuss pool contract real quick. I'll make a motion to do that.
Good second.
Second.
Cerreta,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yes.
Fontaine,
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
and Warren.
Yes.
Motion to amend the agenda for discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Foltz.
Okay, well, I don't know whose committee it's under right now, but Mark and I met, obviously our administrator and Jim Davis, Mike Grimes, and really, as I brought up a couple weeks ago, we looked at a better way to look at our expenses as far as running the pool. We had a very productive meeting. I think we're going to address some of that in the next contract. Hopefully you get to see next week. But overall, looking at it, things like broadband, who's paying for the health department license, the gas bills while the pool is operating, electrical service while the pool is operating as an average. Those are the things that we can probably generate $16,000 to $18,000 that'll be paid by both parties. So it is a true reflection of operating expenses. So for example, if we just use say $18,000, we would have got $9,000 in the back this year. I think it's very productive to look at that. And that's just kind of the Cliff Note version of it, but it was a very productive meeting, and I appreciate Mark getting involved with that. And Ben indicated it to me like a month ago when we sat down. Those were some of my concerns. We're also going to address some of the pool rate structures. It's not going to be very big rate increases, but they should be increased where we can to reflect all the capital improvement dollars that we are spending on Y. So we're going to bring that up to everybody with the first reading next week. Hopefully we can pass that in 2 readings. I think we discussed a lot of it last year. Here we're kind of tweaking the contract and getting it in a better place for both the city and the Y to reflect our costs.
Just to add on to that, we did hammer out a lot of these costs. Those costs that you saw at the last, that was like $41,000. And Doug and I went through those. A lot of those were just one-time costs this year. Like some of it was demo costs that were thrown in that we won't have next year. A lot of it was like gas costs that, like Doug said, that were off-season. Well, how we tried to handle the gas costs, for example, well, the gas is only on anyways when the pool's there, so the electrical costs, we still have electric out there, probably around $400 or $500 a month for pump still goes to get water out of the pit and things like that. So we would take the average of the off-season, and they would pay the difference then between the average. They agreed to a lot of that payment with that. So we've actually, of that $41,000, we were in the range of taking off around $30,000. So we made some big strides to that, and Doug was there. It was a win-win-win for everybody, I think, with that. Different licensings. We bought an ice machine last year. We'll never buy that again. I mean, just different things that we had to do to set this thing up that we didn't have to do. And that wasn't reflected until we had to actually dig deep with that. So I think everybody was happy. As far as the rates that increase, I looked at those, and I'm not one for increasing, but I think they were modest and they were really well done. And I think that with the cost that we had associated this year, I think they were relevant to where we wanted it to be with moving forward. So I think it's just, and I think the wine stays all in with it too.
Right.
So
I think it's been very productive. And I think the one big cost increase you see is the daily admission book. Instead of $8, it'll be $9. So which will put more of an emphasis on buying memberships if you're eligible for it. Because really, you live in the city, and there's a ratio that Ben likes to use to reflect that. But I think it's, the membership's the best way to go, especially the rainy summers we've had. Hopefully, we'll have a great year with the warmer summer this year. So you'll see it next week. If you haven't seen it, write you some emails.
Do we post the rates on the website at all once we have them set up? Because a president said something to me that he lives there, and they said, well, why am I paying so much more than the people at the YMCA? And I said, well, they get a discount for a member already. But I said, you get a discount as a resident.
Yes.
But I don't think he understood that, so they might have to just be.
Yeah, I'm sure the rates are on the website. Now, what we're unclear of, and maybe you can answer that, we have the contract, but we also have a secondary ordinance for the pool rate prices, right? So there'll be 2 pieces of legislation that we can pass.
Yes, sir. I met with Mr. Wheeler as well, and we hammered out that additional contract language for the cost sharing on utilities, but indeed, there's a separate ordinance that covers
Pool rates. So we will bring in both of next week.
do we need to do the rates next week?
We can do the
Contract.
full contract, because we had that in committee. This is the second time we've actually discussed it in committee. We haven't had the rate yet.
Right.
But that is something that, given the time that we need to turn around and how quickly the season for pool pass purchases is coming up, we need to pass that on as an emergency as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, is there a reason to wait? I think we should get it done.
Can we get this, we'd like to get this done by the end of the month, or the first week, as pool passes, we'll be here, doing that.
If you wish, you can amend the agenda and put a very brief committee meeting on as well next week, just to discuss the.
I like that, if we can do committee, have first reading on both of them, have the second reading later, on to the emergency clause. So we still have some public input. Good.
Let's have a quick committee next week, and then we'll pass on emergency on the 21st.
I think that was the, we're not meeting.
28th, I'm sorry, 28th.
Do you want a motion now, Jeff?
Yeah, we have a motion and a second to include a committee, special committee meeting.
A special committee meeting to hold.
It was under finance.
Yeah, we can do some finance and property.
Okay, it's 45.
Oh, we do that. I'll read
Just to,
that. Or you want to do?
Well, we'll have first reading on that.
let's do
It's
6:45. Let's do
Okay.
6:45.
one of the reasons we're not going to pass on emergency, and what the public.
And so we have an executive session at 6 and 6:45.
Okay.
All right. So that's, we have a motion and a second to have a special.
Motion to do.
Second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll do that at 6:45 next Monday. Finance and property special committee meeting. Okay, good. Anything else? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Those in favor,
Yeah, I could just add, Mark, excellent presentation. I mean, that was very comprehensive. And Dan, when you mentioned about looking back behind you, to see what we're leaving behind, you know, it is amazing. As you went through the list, there are so many things that the city has accomplished. I mean, we've come so far since the Hoover Company left back in 2007, 2008. And we went down to our lowest with the income tax in 2010, 5.4 million. What, 2016 years ago, we were at 7 million, dropped to 5.4, and now in 2015, we're finally above 7 million, right? So, we made a lot of progress. But you know what's interesting is the master plan really is a guiding document. The master plan committee members, most of them have left. But, you know, it really does tie in what we were talking about the Main Street Committee. And really, it's like the Main Street Master Plan Committee. And I mean, you guys have really done an excellent job. Because in the beginning, I think there were a lot of skeptics. And it's a comprehensive plan is really, really important. But developing the plan is the challenge, but that's really the easy part. Implementing it is the big challenge. And we've done a whole lot with it, and there's a lot more to do. So excellent presentation.
None of those were meant to be done right away. Rome was not built in a day. Each one of those takes some time. You see, every one of those is a different timeline. The ones that were easier to do, they weren't easy to get done. They were easy to get done quick, right? But some of these other ones, you know, until some development takes place or the developer steps up, right? Those are wishes until we get some of that going. So we probably just need to be more kind of encouraging, kind of in some ways assertive to try to get that done.
Here's the real estate markets, you know, firm and stable, there's a little inventory, and there's a huge demand, so.
All my neighbors.
Yeah.
They're moving. Everyone around you is moving. Is that a reason for that?
I think it's more who lives around.
Yeah, I would say 2016 should be a strong year for that. Development and building.
Just two more announcements. We did get, we have the new owners of Gazzardi's, Mount Gazzardi's. And the gentleman that took it over was Mark Manzetta, and he actually worked for Wendy's, or Dave from Wendy's, the owner himself. Yeah, Dave Thomas. And so he said that his goal is to keep the costs low, and he's actually one of the relatives of Mount Gazzardi. He's taking it over, and they're keeping the costs low, and they're making improvements. And he said they don't want to grow too fast, but they've, you know, obviously seen a really big increase in their business since they've been there. So they've done an excellent job. And great food. His name is Mark Manzetta. He and his wife Sharon are running it, and they live back and forth in Columbus. And he's got a lot of experience working with Dave Thomas, so he knows how to run restaurants.
Is he one of the grandsons?
Yes, I believe he is, yes. Yes,
It's
really,
it's his wife.
this is what,
I believe it's his wife.
yeah. And so it's really, they've got family pictures up there and so forth, really, really nice restaurant. The other item is that we were looking at doing the state of the city, and we were looking at April 25th. We had talked, the council president and I, about having it like the night of a council meeting, but down at the Civic Center, we could showcase the Civic Center. We've got a lot of improvements down there, right? And so rather than having another evening where the council and the employees have to go to, if we have it the same night, you know, it would be up to the council whether we had held a short council meeting down at the Civic Center or held it afterwards. But we're thinking if we do it at 6 p.m., Doug Lane is going to be the moderator again, so the Chamber of Commerce will be the sponsor of it. We're thinking, you know, around 6 o'clock sharp start, get it done in less than an hour, move on out, and then, you know, if there's items on the agenda for the council meeting, we can do it that same night, or, you know, that would be up to the council, but I just thought we'd throw the date out there, April 25th, and that would be a good time. And then we'll move ahead with that.
Don't forget, next weekend, turn your clocks spring ahead.
So we're not late to the meeting.
Right. No excuses.
My phone, it automatically happens now.
Before we can go, I want to thank Eric for all the information he fed me
Yes.
for all that stuff. So Eric, thank you for that.
Yeah, very good work.
All right, very good. We have a motion and a second on the floor to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Adjourned. We did break the council.
Yes.
Probably have to jump in on the floor.
Yes.
An email? That's it. I've been pretty busy. You are. We're 26. Still big. That was the over.
Alrighty then. Mr. Osborne? New glasses, huh?
Okay, you're right. I hope I don't find it.
How about